However, there is, of course, only one place to go now as we bring you the breaking news this evening that the Premier League clubs are set to hold a vote at their annual general meeting next month on a proposal to get rid of VAR at the start of next season. Let's head to Old Trafford now. We'll talk about the football in just a moment. But we can hear from the top. Everyone wants him. We've got him. He's the wonderful football writer and, of course, the host of the Sunday edition. The legend that is Henry Winter joins us. Henry, good evening to you.
Hi, Andy. Hi, Darren. What an extraordinary story.
Wow. Yes, let's jump straight into that one now. My only concern with it is the fact that they could still vote. 14 minimum is what we need for the Premier League to go, okay, but still the Premier League can make that decision. With everything you know, and you know so much more than the rest of us put together, if the Premier League did tally up the votes and it was minimum of 14, is there any way they could still say to the Premier League clubs, no, we're sticking with what we know?
Yes, they could.
Wow.
And what's going to be interesting is to see the makeup of the 6 or 7 who would vote to keep it. Whether they are the European clubs, because they are used to it, they probably quite like it. I mean, you've come to me here at Old Trafford, the start of this season. Remember this VAR, the plan to get rid of VAR is very much being driven by Wolves because of the issues they've had at Bournemouth, against West Ham, but particularly in the start of the season against Manchester United when Onana took out Kalajic, and they should have had a penalty in the last few seconds. So it's a huge issue. I imagine there are Mexican waves going off amongst your listeners, amongst fans all over the country, also amongst 1 or 2 players who are just fed up being on the pitch, waiting for a decision to be made. So those are the pro scrapping VAR. But there's also an issue of actually, is it VAR? Is it the technology? Or is it the level of, the lack of quality from the officials? The human implementation of this. That's got to be taken into account. The consistency has been poor this season. The lack of communication, the lack of transparency is poor. Because the game belongs to the players and to the fans. It doesn't belong to David Ellery and IFAB and Stockley Park. And so there has to be better communication. So I don't think VAR has actually helped itself in terms of how it's communicated. But it does have pluses, and the moment it gets scrapped, first there'll be issues going into Europe, but also there'll be people going, that handball would have been spotted, we'll have another hand of God, we'll have another Thierry Henry in Paris thwarting the Irish. So, it's definitely worth having a debate, certainly.
Henry, as you said there, and I think you're totally right, I don't think it's necessarily the technology, it's the officials that are using the technology that haven't been good enough this year. But if they were to scrap VAR, do you think that's a step backwards?
We live in the 21st century. We live in a technological age. We live in an age where all the fans tonight will be able to be listening to you, will be able to sort of stream the game on their phones, will be able to go back immediately. So why shouldn't the person who is making that decision, the most important decision, the man in the middle, the referee, he or she must have access to technology. So it's not as simple as VAR is completely wrong. It's the English implementation of VAR is completely wrong. Now, on the whole, in Europe, particularly in the Champions League, where you're seeing the better officials, everyone's going, that's really good because they use it properly. The problem we have got is the implementation. It's almost over forensic. It's almost like they're trying to re-referee the game. They're almost trying to chalk off goals. No, just keep it for what it was initially made for a Thierry Henry, for a hand of God, which is for the clear and obvious. It's gone away from that.
Henry, when the clubs come to vote, who's involved in the process, the discussion, to decide from that club's point of view which way they're going to vote?
It's a really good point.
Would the manager be involved in that?
The manager has to be involved, and a PFA, the player rep, the senior players at the club, obviously they're all sort of disappearing off either to the Euros or towards the Euros or to the beach, Ibiza, wherever they go nowadays, probably Vegas. So absolutely, they have to be consulted because they're the ones. And also there's a bit of PFA research going on at the moment in the issues of why we're getting so many injuries this season. At one point in the season, the fifth of all the players were injured. So is it anything of that to do with VAR hanging around on the pitch for 5 minutes in the cold over the winter? Did that contribute to soft tissue injuries? I don't know. They don't know yet, but they're looking into that. So the players, the PFA have to be consulted. The League Managers Association have to be consulted as well. You can't have with respect, a suit going from a boardroom at a club into a meeting like that, which has so much, it's a sort of technical debate in a way. There has to be the voice of the dressing room heard as well.
Okay. Two very quick questions before we move on to a discussion about tonight's game at Old Trafford. Question number one is, which way do you think the vote will go? And question number two is, will we find out the clubs that did and didn't vote for it?
Yeah, we will, because the Premier League leaks like the roof above me.
Okay.
In fact, I know it's your club. And if you know any good builders, it's actually started raining. But Sal's got his talkSPORT brolly out. Actually, he won't be sharing that. Absolutely. We'll all be squeezing underneath it. No, I mean it's a really good point. It absolutely will come out.
Okay. Which way do you think it will go?
I still think they'll stick with VAR. I think there'll be a lot of heavy briefing from within the organisation to keep it. But I imagine the players and a lot of the managers, and remember this, a lot of this is being driven by Gary O'Neill and Wolves, will want it scrapped.
Let's talk about the game tonight, or maybe not actually. Let's talk about what could be happening next year at Manchester United. You mentioned, United need a new roof. There are questions as to whether or not they need a new manager. Kieran McKenna is the latest manager to be linked to them in various news outlets today. I'm a big fan of his. Any manager that can take a club through 2 divisions into the Premier League, I think they've got something a little bit special about them. How realistic do you think that scenario is?
I think he needs a season with Ipswich Town, out of respect for them and also out of respect for his career. I mean, I've interviewed him a couple of times over the past couple of years at Ipswich Town, and he's ambitious, but he's not in a tearing hurry. And would you step into Manchester United at the moment? I mean, the first thing they've got to do is get Dan Ashworth out of Newcastle United, pay the compensation, be respectful to Newcastle United, and get Dan Ashworth in here to rebuild this club, along with the other people that they're appointing as well. Before then, you can go on to the beauty parade of managers.
Okay. What do you think is going to happen tonight? Just briefly.
Absolute guarantee we'll get a huge VAR story. But as long as the roof stays okay, but I've got Sal's umbrella, so
do you know what, Henry? You've mentioned it a few times now. I hope you get wet. I hope you get soaked tonight. I really do.
I am a winter.
Very nice indeed. Listen, we love your work. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for coming on. We'll speak to you in a bit. Enjoy the game.
Cheers, Henry.
Cheers, guys.
There you go, the wonderful Henry Winter. He knows his stuff.
It's a mad one, isn't it? Scrap. I mean, I would like to see it scrapped. I would not be VAR fan. I know it's not the technology, it's the referees that are using the technology that have. But then
I want it gone.
We're clearly not good. We're clearly not good enough in this country to use it, because, as Henry said there, in Europe, no problems. Even when we don't see the lines, when it's an offside, I know they sometimes go back to it, but it's never like, okay, we'll get on with it. But in this country, it's every decision, every single decision takes ages.
Yeah, and the semi-automated offside, I think, is incredible.
Yeah.
Because you can't argue with it. Because you can't. When they put the lines on the screen, you go, oh, that's not straight, or his elbow's on that. But with the semi-auto, it's brilliant.
But the fact, again, this is another problem. The fact we said no to that at first.
The Premier League clubs did. Yeah, you're right. I know, I don't get that.
Me neither.
The minute I saw that, I was like, wow.
Incredible technology.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're always going to moan as a football fan. We're always going to moan about any decision. The question is, do you want to moan about a mistake that's made through technology, or do you want to moan about a mistake that's made by a human? I'd rather moan about a human referee making a mistake.
But that's the problem. That's why people are so angry nowadays, is that they brought in the technology to help referees out, and the fact they're still getting it wrong, and some of the decisions badly wrong. I can tell you something. I know exactly what way Forest are voting. That right now.
There'll be a lot of clubs, I think, voting that way.
talkSPORT Drive. Super opinionated sporting debate. Monday to Friday afternoon from 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.